How are farmers and elite sports figures the same? Discover the answer to that question and so much more in this episode of Food, Flowers, and Fun, Visits with Farm Women from Around the World, where we talk to Candace Clavin of Waterway Farm. We are sponsored, as always, by Penlight for Farmers, helping overworked farmers thrive with more energy, time, and abundance. If you're the woman who does it all, farm work, housework, bookwork, homework, getting up at the break of dawn, this is the podcast for you.
How do you multiply by fractions now?
Get away from the cares of the day. Restock, rootstock, feedstock, seedstock. Chat with women around the world who raise food, flowers, and fun. With your host, Kay Castrataro. That's me. So welcome back to this episode of Food, Flowers, and Fun. Today, we have got lavender farmer extraordinaire, Candace Clavin from Waterway Lavender Farm. And you are just going to love this woman. She is so diverse. She is into how we can stay healthy in every single aspect of our lives as we're farm women. She's into advocacy. She's into food and access to food for all sorts of different people. So let's just jump right in. Candace, I'm so excited to
Hey,
have you. Welcome.
thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen, for inviting me here. I'm so excited. Anything to do with food, fun, flowers. It's absolutely a wonderful farming experience for me. And to be invited here as you begin a pretty big agricultural journey for you and for all of us in the farming community. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah.
so pleased to have you. And for those of you who are just joining us, we've actually got something pretty fun because when we did our pre-screening call, Candace was in the process of working on distilling some of her white lavender, and so
Yeah.
we got to get some footage of that. So
Yeah.
we'll maybe just start right in with the whole, how'd you get into lavender?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, when we called to do a pre-screening, so I knew it was 11:30 that we were going to meet, and I had sort of set up distillation of lavender earlier in the day. So we have to heat the water, we have to steam, cut all the flowers, get them into the distillation machine, and it was supposed to like go off at about 10 o'clock, and it didn't. So here I have the phone in one hand to talk to Kristen as the steam starts up, which is, that is the moment. You have about maybe 10 or 15 minutes when distillation starts to really get the essential oils coming out. And it happened like instantaneous. So I'm holding the phone with her and she's like, what's going on here? So I'm like, all right, let me flip the phone and show her what we're in the process of doing while I'm trying to extract the essential oils at the same time.
And in
So
perfect
really,
K fashion, I say, do you mind if I hit record? Because we're going to be able to use this footage later.
right, right. So it
So
was
we
it was a
did. So
fun way. It was
you will see that.
yeah, we got it right. We got Kristen and you guys right into seeing what's going on, our next step here at the farm, which through some grants we have our distillation equipment that comes from the Portugal and also from the Ukraine and also from the United States. So it really was an exciting moment to jump right in with a lot of shiny things and water going on at the same time. So one of the things, so I began distilling is a new thing over the past 2 years for us. And I'm one of the incredibly lucky people. I just came back from Provence, where we did distillation. I was with a group of aromatic oil people from all over the world, and also a group of foragers and people who use herbs to work with animals and with horses and with dogs. So we had people from Russia, people from France, from Germany, from Arizona, from Los Angeles, from Sardinia, and none of us
How
had met
mundane. You had
before.
Americans there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was there, the Rhode Islander, and we all went to Provence to a town in the national park there, to learn more about the processes and the health benefits and how to use essential oils and how to forage what's there, and also how to harvest. We're harvesting lavender in 102-degree temperature. So I thought I knew a lot about lavender because of what we do here, but boy, I learned so much more while we were there as well. And I became more and more involved in growing herbs, many kinds of herbs here we grow. But I was a beekeeper as well, and I had some lavender, but I noticed the bees continually would go to that. And I started to grow more and more lavender for the bees. And little by little, the bees sort of took the backstage, and I started to grow lavender, and more people wanted to know about it, and we were able to offer education. And I grew it here on the what is now the Barrington Farm School. It was a private school here, I mean, private farm that was here. And I've since moved the lavender from there. But it turns out that lavender grows so well in this climate. Who would ever think this? I mean, there's over 100 types of lavender that you can grow, but it doesn't like water. It doesn't, you don't have to spray it pesticides. Deer hate it. So it became an incredibly sustainable crop. And it lasts some 10, some 15 years, the plants, if treated correctly and if done correctly. No mulch. It can grow in a very, very arid area, but it's okay with, with the rain that we get here is just about perfect. And
Yep.
Waterway Lavender Farm, and the farm is up from the bay, up from Narragansett Bay, and outside of Vineyard, which also would do really well here. It's just a perfect place to have lavender. And where we are here, we're what we call peri-urban area.
Yep.
And a peri-urban area is not the suburb, well, not the city and not rural. We're in between, so we are right in the middle of the suburbs, but we are a farm, we're a recognized farm, and we get support from different farm agencies and farm groups because of what we do. But it's a real balance. But I think in the future, this will be how many small family farms and new farms come to be will be in these kind of areas and in the city in lots that aren't being used on top of buildings. So we're very involved in inspiring other people um, to farm, particularly, my passion is young farmers and actually children in the schools, to teach them about agriculture and a respect for farmers and to
Yeah.
realize what a difficult profession it is to do, certainly full time, but to do it all and
Well,
how.
and let's talk about that for a minute. I'm going to kind of jump in for a second because
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm really starting to have a passion for is redefining agriculture and what it
Mhm.
means to be a farmer. And I know that, I'm not the first one to come up with this, but coming from a multi-generational farm background, I recognize that there are a lot of biases inside of agriculture about what a real farmer looks like, how they farm, how much acreage they have, how much money they make off of it. Like and it changes from person to person, from group to group,
Mhm.
but what you're talking about peri-urban farming and farming on rooftops, like I love that whole like green roofs. I totally feel like our roofs need to be rethought. Like they're a power
Absolutely.
source, they're a food source, like there's so much stuff we can do with them if they're properly used. Uh,
Sure.
and in urban areas where there are a lot of food deserts, people cannot have the same kind of access to fresh vegetables and fruit that a lot of other areas can. And so how do we bring agriculture into those more peri-urban and urban areas and also validate the fact that the people doing that work are
Hmm.
actually farmers, even if it's like
Absolutely.
sustainable homesteading or like I feel
Hmm.
like maybe we need to broaden that understanding. Can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. One of the groups that I work with is the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. In our state, we've been lucky, and there are in other states the food policy, and so it's the word there, food policy, and that is the place where smaller farms and urban, let's call them homesteads, definitely is a great word for it, can be recognized. as women that come here, migrants that need a space to grow food that they know that they're comfortable with. In Rhode Island, we're lucky enough we have with the African Alliance and Southside Community Land Trust that have been able to acknowledge these small farmers. And these people depend on what they grow, whether to sell it or to eat it for their families. And so which is what farmers always were before, but sometimes you need intervention from government, subsidies, grants. Some of the areas, for instance, in the city, the land is not safe to farm on because of contamination. So what do you do with that? Well, you set up raised beds that don't use that soil, and you cover the soil that's there. Otherwise, it's a wasteland that's not being used. And the same with water for those areas. Well, what again, the NRCS, the conservation, can give you tanks in order to get the rainwater, which is fantastic for your plants as
Okay.
well. So that whole area and a respect for those people as farmers. And the best way to do that, that I think, is to set up markets. So the
Yes.
markets to sell their products, suddenly you go, oh, this is a farmer who's feeding me, and the realization, no farmers, no food, but these people are feeding us, and they are farmers. And that's, suddenly you make a jump from this huge industrial farming place, out in the Midwest or, wherever, stockyards, to these people that are right here. These are local people providing food to my family.
And there are so many benefits to that. Like, I think we don't really understand all of the benefits that come to supporting truly local, even very small scale local agriculture. And it
Absolutely.
is it is an economic
Hmm.
benefit because, excuse me, when you have farmers that are growing the food in your local area, like so much larger percentage of the income that they make stays in our community. So we're actually building wealth in the community by supporting even these very small farms. Whereas, as you're saying, the big industrial farms, and I am not opposed like to having industrial farms because we have a huge population. And so like to be able to feed people as well as we want, it's a very good thing to have big farms as well.
Oh, we love big farms. Don't get me
Right.
wrong.
We
Little
don't want to
farms,
lose. No,
little
no,
farms,
I'm
we want
I'm
to be
I'm
big
just saying
farms. Right,
we
right,
want all of them. We want
right, right,
all of the agriculture and we want it all to be valued and to be done to the best that it can be for the environment,
right.
for social purposes, and for the farmer's well-being. And I think what you were saying about immigrant women who are coming in and they're starting these farms to grow, or small plots even, to grow their own food that they're familiar with. Like we don't even think about that
Hmm.
as wherever we come from.
Right.
And this is why I love having farmers from around the world because,
Hmm.
I've talked to papaya growers and cassava growers, and I'm like, I don't
Yum.
know anything about papaya
Right.
and cassava. Like, teach me, teach me. But when people do migrate in, we think about the language sometimes. We think about, having to find a place to live. We think about the culture. We don't even consider the food. Like
Hmm.
people come and they have a whole way of feeding their family that they're accustomed to, and then they come here and they can't get that food. And
Right.
and so like how do they relearn how to feed their families? And isn't it better if they can bring that with them and
Exactly,
make that
Kristen. Yeah, yeah. One of
transition
the great
easier
great
and
examples.
enrich the
Yep.
rest of us,
Yep.
like
One of the
Kiwi, who
great
grew kiwi as a
examples.
kid.
Yep. Yep. In our farmers here, and this is something that we throw away, are sweet potato vines. Now, how we grow sweet potatoes, and you sell sweet potatoes, and the African immigrants like, well, where are the vines? We want the vines. We don't want we want the sweet potatoes. But that, and that became like this light went off in everyone's head. We would never know that. And here's a culture that was one of the main things that they wanted, a real simple thing like that that you don't think about. And they were able,
Dandelions. I
yeah,
remember I
yeah.
remember as a kid when people would come to we of course Rhode Island has a very large Italian um population, and
Mhm.
Johnston where I grew up had all it was like very Italian. And so all of these Italian families would make like dandelion wine.
Oh, really?
And so they'd come to the farms and they wanted to go out and like be harvesting the dandelions. And we
Yeah.
were sitting there at first saying, you realize it's a weed, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we realize it's a weed, and we realize that we can actually make something of it that you would really want to have.
Yup, absolutely.
So
Oh, and
is
it's so good. The dandelion is so high in so many different vitamins, which, I didn't know that. And we use it for distillation. It's got incredible benefits, and the Italians knew that long ago.
yes.
And don't forget, what was the other? Oh, the everybody loves them now, but squash flowers, right?
Oh
Who
my
needed
gosh,
those
yes.
things, right?
Well, you make more now. So my family's always done a lot of mixed vegetables, and so we've sold lots of different types of squash. And when the first restaurants started coming in, or this, small Italian families would come in asking for squash flowers, my mom was like, wait, well, we can't pick the squash flowers because that's how the squash gets made. And they're like, no, we don't need the female flowers. We only need the
Yeah.
male flowers. And then we're like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we started harvesting them, and you get 10 times, 100 times more for the silly squash flowers that they're gonna stuff and fry and turn
Yeah.
into like a delicacy than you ever would for the actual squash, which
Exactly. Yeah.
seems so insane and yet is genius. Like it's just genius. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
so
yeah,
I
so
love this.
here, all the restaurants here, as of last year, were wanted every squash flower they could get, and at a good price too, which was
Yes,
wonderful to sell them and to find the crops that are, well, lavender was another one here. Whoever thought that you could, sell to the gin makers and to the candy makers and to the bakeries. Originally they're like, What, you eat lavender? Yes, it's a culinary lavender. And we find all these wonderful small, I'll say niche, although it's not niche anymore, products. Oh, the leaves of raspberries. Another one that women during certain parts of their pregnancy are great to strengthen tissues. Who would think it?
really. I
Leaves
had
of them,
no idea.
right?
See, this is why I love this show. I learn something
Right.
every single episode. So is it
Absolutely.
a certain time of like, do the leaves have to be at a certain age? Are they better when they're younger, when they're older, or
Oh
does it
yeah,
not
when
matter?
they have
And
more good stuff in them. Almost every plant at a certain age has better and good stuff in it. Even, well, how about grape leaves? Another one, right? Who thinks, you
yes,
cut the grape leaves? Well, you want the younger ones because they're more pliable. And so I think for using them in teas or whatever the leaves are used for, that they're probably when they're younger, not too young though. But lavender's the same way, right? You pick it at a certain time for oils, but you'd pick it at another time if you're going to use it for culinary. So yeah, everything's got its little, and squash, I'm sure. The big
yes,
ones, you wait till they're really big so you can make boats out of them. Isn't
yes, you
that
can
how it
stuff
works?
them.
And that's the fun part of farming.
Whereas when I like to eat them when they're like pretty small, and
Right.
people are like, your squash are small. I'm like, yeah, but I like them that way. They don't have a lot of big seeds. They're nice and tender. But yeah, if I'm gonna be scooping them out and stuffing them full of meat and cheese and all kinds of
Yeah, that's
really yummy
delicious. That
yumminess.
sounds good. Oh, and garlic is another one, right? Everyone thinks have to wait till the garlic bulbs. And then all of a sudden we used to call them, I don't know, in Italian, the chiches or the tops of them. And now everybody wants the tops of the garlic in the spring. They call them garlic greens, or they have all kinds of different names for the small pieces on the top. And that's, 10 years ago, people would have thought you were crazy to eat those, and now everyone
Right.
wants them. Or fennel is another one. The flowers, the pollen from the fennel is in the top restaurants. We use fennel powder, from the
Really?
flowers, so they want flower, and a lot of the flowers, they want the pollen from them, from just
Wow.
the flowers before any fruit or vegetable forms. And sure enough, it has this beautiful flavor to it as well. So,
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So tell me how I want to know how you got into the lavender thing because you used to raise sheep
Yeah,
in
we
New
were, I
York.
was,
Is that right? You were a farmer
yeah.
in New York?
That's right. I began my farming in the Finger Lakes in New York. I actually, um being a farmer, held four jobs at one time. So I was a proofreader at night. I had a rural column on farming and rural living. and raised 200 sheep and goats, and we had exotic fowl was another one.
Oh, did
And
you have your exotic fowl? Which kind of fowl did you have? Did you have
Oh,
like
beautiful,
peacocks or
everything you can imagine from, guinea hens, of course. No, not of
course?
course. Peacocks, for the feathers. We would sell to, the fly tyers, right?
Yes.
So the
My
hackles from,
ex, my
yeah,
ex is a
hackles from the
fly tire.
roosters,
Yep.
Toulouse geese, which by the way, never get, and, ducks and just about every kind of, anything we could get, right? We would try to hatch or grow or bring in. So that was it. That was in the Finger Lakes. We also had mules and goats and all kinds, just what you would assume on a large farm that you could have. So there were
Yeah.
40 acres there, and basically, as all farmers, you look for what markets are available and what people want. So everything from growing pumpkins to herbs, just a diverse farm so that you could exist. So we ended up we got rid of the what we call the four-legged animals. I got those two-legged ones, the little boys, and decided that that part of New York, very, very rural, that it would be better to have more community around us. And we did have community here with a monastery. My husband's aunt was here in the monastery. So we moved to Rhode Island, which I had never been to.
Oh,
So
wow.
no idea. So I just said, find me a place where I can have some land. And that's all I knew. So I never saw the house. I never saw the land where we moved to till I got here.
Oh
So
my goodness, that was
yeah.
bold.
So it was sight unseen. But then, I fell in love with Rhode Island. I fell in love. I missed the salt water. I had grown up by Long Island, by Point Lookout in Westbury in Long Island. So I love the salt water more than anything.
Yep.
So it was good to be back. And it's so precious here. But I was able to use that also in our farming. So we use the seaweed. I go down and harvest the seaweed and bring that
Excellent.
up to use, which is an incredible, for what I grow specifically, is an incredible additive to the soil here. So I became involved somewhat in aquaculture as well, and as long with the land agriculture. So land and sea here in Rhode
Yes.
Island
Yep.
became a very, very special thing. And yeah, and the lavender just little by little sort of morphed into it. Like I said, because as
Bees.
beekeepers, we used more and more of it. And the farm community, many parts in Rhode Island, the Department of Environmental Management has been incredibly helpful and inspirational to help. And the farm groups, the Organic Farmers Association, NOFA, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island have been wonderful. And then got involved in the food pantries as well, growing food for the pantries, became a big part. And then teaching farming to children here who had never realized a carrot came from the ground,
Right.
or a beet, that you could eat a beet, and that an egg came from a chicken,
Well,
they thought,
and there's so many, it's so interesting because, I grew up on a farm
yeah,
and my grandparent, bleh, my children's grandparents, so my parents are still farming. And
okay.
so there are so many things that my kids will come out and say things. And I have this moment of, wait a minute, how do you not know that? And it's terrifying to me because I
Mhm,
look at it and I say, oh my goodness, like I've been a full-time farmer, I've been an agricultural service provider, I am working with farmers now to improve their lives. And
mhm,
some very basic things about agriculture my kids don't know.
mhm,
And you think that these things just kind of happen, like they just learn it. And it's really by experience that they learn it.
mhm,
And
mhm,
even being one generation removed from the farm takes so much of that knowledge away from them. And so we are definitely in our urban areas and peri-urban areas,
mhm.
we are working with so many generations removed, like two,
Right,
three generations
right,
removed,
right.
where it really is true ignorance. It's not stupidity, it's just lack of exposure. And
Mhm,
so the work that you've done in the schools, I think
mhm,
is absolutely essential because we need to get these urbanized kids
Mhm.
back into the soil, or we're not going to have the
Right.
same kind of farm kids growing up. Like they need to know that farming is even a thing.
Well, you know, and I certainly know the importance of the connection of nature to our children. You know, I mean, I mean, studies and studies
Yeah,
that
holistic.
that prove that
Yeah,
even a child that sits in nature, and I'll just say sits, which would be anything at all, um, is healed. You know, and it's a path that you're right. I mean, it's disconnected. I mean, the children who don't know where the water comes from, well, it comes out of a faucet, and they don't realize below your feet, you know, is all of life, is all of water. And that connection just to bring them out, you know, the programs that just bring them out to sit in a field or to go through the forest or to look in a worm bin, you know, and see this weekend we had done at the Barrington Farm School just to have them put their hands in a worm bin and see this, you know, this connection that these animals are actually these animals, these insects, I don't even know what worms are right now, but that they take our leftovers and they make new
right.
soil out of it and
They're
new, you know, new
recyclers.
things.
They are
Right.
natural
The
recyclers.
circle
They
of
take
nature.
garbage and turn it into
Yeah.
soil. Yeah,
And
it's
to teach
amazing.
them the respect for the circle of nature and the circle of that, you know, in agriculture, what's involved in it, and that this is, you know, they're basic parts of human biology that depend on nature, you know.
So let's talk about that because now that we've gotten into the more holistic side of it, which is where I always get really juiced up,
Oh, good.
farming is this interesting combination of being out in nature and inherently doing things that are designed to heal us. You know, as you said, they've been doing tons of studies about just being in trees, like what it's like to just walk through trees. And, I saw some interesting research on waterfalls and I made the connection with like overhead irrigation that the effect of moving water
Mhm.
actually calms your whole system. So
Absolutely.
on the one hand, women and men who are involved in farming are constantly surrounded by the things that are supposed to be nurturing and healing us.
Hmm.
And at the same time, farmers are at 2 to 3 times higher risk of suicide than the
Hmm.
average population, which doesn't seem to make sense. And so
Hmm.
it makes you wonder, well, what is it about this occupation that can be so nurturing for us
Hmm.
and can also be so destructive for us. And
Hmm.
so let's talk a little bit about how you try to maximize that nurturing part of agriculture and minimize the stress because we understand. I mean, finances stressful,
Hmm.
politics stressful, policy stressful. Like all of those things cause issues for farmers. But how can we counteract that so that we
Right.
keep our farmers healthy for as long as possible?
Hmm. Well,
And
when
make
you,
it so that when
yeah,
they're out of farming,
yeah.
they don't all of a sudden have a crash. Because I think that's a really big, like, how do we get them to nurture their whole selves while they're farming so that when they're not farming, they still are healthy?
Absolutely. I think it's the same as, let's say, sports figures that work in you know, sports for 20 years in football and then suddenly stop. So there's a mental and a physical, and in farming, remember your physical is so important to keep your body strong. And your mental is right next to that and so important. I mean, the farmers, for instance, a dairy farmer has to go milk cows 3, sometimes 4 times a day, isn't taking a vacation in 20 years. And if their body fails them at all, then mentally, you know, this is their whole livelihood. This is all they've done. So they can't stop. And if they stop, there's a huge hole in their lives, in their spirits. And so
Identity. They
anything that
don't know who
goes
they
wrong,
are.
yeah. And farmers, for instance, losing their farms, which is a very regular thing now with bankruptcy. And remember, a whole family usually lives on, this is on family farms. The whole family depends on just what's going on their farm. So the stress of anything that can change that or destroy that doesn't just destroy one farmer,
Mhm.
destroys a whole family, the dynamics of the family, each depending on it. Your kids are the ones that, again, I'll say dairy farming because that's such a easy one to see the crises that go on. But your kids are out there milking your cows for you. Usually the wife or the husband is cooking inside and doing the finances. So it's a whole group dynamic. And if one person in that is injured, the whole thing can fall apart. Most farmers can't hire anyone else to help outside of their family, or they can hire just a few people to help out.
Well, we
Um,
sold our dairy farm when I went to college. I was the
mhm,
oldest. I was the oldest of three kids.
mhm.
And when I graduated from high school, because we actually dairy farmed in New York as well.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that. I'm finding that
there you
out. Okay.
go.
Wow. Hmm.
And so when I graduated and I went to the Midwest to go to college, they started losing their labor force. And it was exactly that question, like, do you put on an extra 50 cows so
Hmm.
you can hire somebody to come in and take over the milking and the feeding that all of us kids were doing? Like, my
Hmm.
brother and I split milking. He milked in the morning, I milked in the evening. My sister did all the feeding of the cows and the calves. My mom did
Yeah.
like, so when you start losing that, it really does make a huge difference. And so
Oh.
I think what you're saying there is that the balance is so tenuous. Like,
Hmm.
it really can pivot on one person's health or presence there.
Right. And their safety as well.
Yes.
I think I had mentioned, maybe I didn't, that we had farmers that three generations that would come just to do our hay fields. The grandfather didn't have an arm because he had got it caught in a machine. The son didn't have a hand because he had got it caught in the machine. And the young boy didn't have a finger because he had caught it in the machine. And they couldn't afford the safety training. They couldn't afford any of the safety equipment, the newer equipment, and maybe they took the stuff off of the machines as well, I
Well,
think.
there is a little bit of that where we have
Mhm,
to change a mindset. I was
mhm,
in a webinar a couple months ago that was all talking about farm safety and how it
mhm,
really has to be a mindset shift, that taking care of our physical and, I would argue, our mental safety
mhm.
is really critical to being able to keep farmers functioning. I mean, my grandfather's missing the top of his thumb from a
Right? You
from a
knew farmers,
chainsaw, a
right?
chainsaw that kicked
Yeah,
back, like,
that's all it takes, right?
my brother's got had pins
Hmm.
in his finger because it got stuck in a hay bind that
Yeah.
dropped on his finger. Like,
Yeah, one bad cow, one bad cow.
oh, one
No,
kick.
the sheep, these huge rams that we had, and the rams, I don't know if those are the male sheep,
Yeah.
and they're big. They're usually 100 pounds more than the cute little ones that you always think of, which whether they're cute is another story. But they would charge you, and the front of their heads are like a piece of cement, and they have horns.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I'd run the other way and they go, no, you can't do that. You have to grab it by the horns and flip it. I'm like, I'm going to flip a 220 pound. Yes, you have to learn to flip this. Now, is that a safety? Which way did the safety should have gone on that? And where was the training on it? So sure enough, gyro, that was our biggest ram. This huge ram runs toward you and you got to grab it and flip them over. But if you didn't do it, there would be an issue. And certainly children could never be the same with bulls, certainly
Yeah.
exactly the same thing with the bull or with the horses. You had to be trained. And if you weren't, terrible things could happen. And
Yeah.
a lot, thank God. Well, cooperative extension was one of the areas, not necessarily in Rhode Island, but have programs on farmers on training. And University of Vermont has a beautiful program, and I even wrote the name down of it. The Northeast is called risk management, an extension, Northeast extension risk management, where you would go through different levels of training, how to keep your strength up, how to pick a crop, how not to go bend down and start to pull things up, but how to lean correctly, or when you did get injured, how to take care of that. And thank goodness there are programs out there, and it's just getting the word out to farmers. And of course, I women farmers to me is so important
Of course.
to do any kind of the wellness and what they call body maintenance, you
Yeah.
know, for farmers that you need, and particularly somebody who's milking 4 times a day and hasn't taken a vacation, they need body and mind wellness programs, you know,
Right.
or
Well,
even.
I ended up finding early in the spring, I did one of my newsletters. I did some research on how farmers could get back into the swing of the growing season because
Mhm,
yes, you have like your livestock producers tend to work more evenly throughout the year. But a
mhm,
lot of your vegetable and fruit producers do not. Like they'll work really hard spring through fall and
mhm.
then they take a break. Now some do,
Hibernate.
some don't. Yeah, there's lots of things we could talk about that dynamic there. But the truth is that the shape that a farmer is in at the end of the growing season is
Mhm.
not at all the shape that they're in at the beginning of the growing
Right.
season. It's kind of, you were talking
Absolutely.
about athletes. It's like the Red Sox, you know, when they show up
Mhm.
at spring training, they are not in the same condition that they're going to be in
Mhm.
August and
Right. Yeah.
September because they have taken the winter off. I mean, and so I found a whole bunch of exercises for farmers that were correlated to the types of work that they would be doing to help
Mhm.
strengthen those specific areas before they got back into the growing season and got themselves hurt. Because how
That's
many of us
terrific.
have done that? We go
Yep.
out, we overwork the first sunny day, and
Yep.
then we're sitting there saying, crap, now I got to
Right.
work and I'm sore and
Right.
and you're trying to play catch up before you've even started the season. And we don't
Hmm.
want that. So, the physical is important. Can you talk about the mental? Because I feel like the mental health is something that we're starting to finally talk about in agriculture, but I think there's still a lot of stigma
Right.
around mental health in farming.
Right.
Can you speak
Well,
to
you know,
that?
farmers or a lot of them are by themselves. You know, either they have large farm pieces of property, so they don't have the everyday interactions with other, let's say, business people that they work with. You know, you don't go into an office,
Right.
um, and you don't share your fears and a lot of your problems. There was no one to share them with, and COVID made that much worse for a lot of farmers,
Mm.
because they not only lost their customers, but you know they lost whatever community did exist. Farm communities used to be incredible. For instance, the Amish community, where
Yeah.
everybody would help each other. And old time farms, a lot of towns still have the what do you call the buildings that were set up just for farm?
Like
The
granges.
Grange, right? And that's
Mhm.
what a Grange was for.
Right.
You know, was for a sense of
It was a
community.
social center.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
was a real sharing place where you could go and you had trouble. Boy, 2 or 3 farmers would come over and help you, you know, with whatever, you hear barn raising. Well, that's what barn raising was. Okay, I can't do that by myself, but a bunch of other farmers. And then when they need help, I'll be over there to help them. So a lot for farm women particularly, they're totally isolated. There's just not that many farm women.
Right.
Either they have to work off the farm or they're trying to run a lot. In this case, it will say a lot of the finances. These are moms. We're talking specifically about moms on farms. You know, so they're running 3 or 4 things, and they have to, you know, again, make sure all food is right. So little by little, they've been setting up. This one, Annie's Project is one of the programs throughout the United States, and UVM also has a wellness program for women to meet in circles. And by a circle, you're not actually there. I mean, you could do it personally, but we even on Zoom to have small circles of farm women that can just say, Today is too much for me. I can't do this." And you can get ideas from other people or programs that'll help or just things like, well, do you ever try just sit down and breathe? Just today is going to be a day, and it's okay because I do the same thing, or I have the strength to do that because this is what I can do. And health, health issues, again, you can get help with a broken arm, but with a broken heart, it's much more difficult to heal because nobody can see that. And in farming, that's a big part. You lose a death of a spouse or a death of a child, or you develop, cancer. These are everyday things for the farm community to try to deal with, and to
Yep.
find outlets for it. We're lucky enough here that we have a mediation center, an ag mediation. It's under that, that is a support group. And aquaculture is the same way, and fishermen, they need it just as
Yeah.
much. Um,
I count, I'll be honest, I count aquaculture
mhm,
as our farmers.
mhm,
I first learned about Rhode Island aquaculture 12 years ago, like
mhm,
a long time ago now. Um, and going and visiting an oyster farm and
mhm,
being like on the boat and talking to the farmer was just amazing. And
mhm.
I'm talking to some of the seaweed farmers
I
actually
love
who are
them. Yeah,
growing seaweed. And I'm
yeah.
like, this is so amazing. And so they will be on our show at some point.
Oh,
I'm
I can't
making
wait.
those connections. I can't wait
Mhm.
either because
Yeah.
again, seaweed, that kind of thing that, as you were saying earlier, it's so nutritionally rich for our
Hmm.
soil and for people like to eat
That's
it.
right.
And here we are in the ocean state where we have more access to it than probably most
Hmm.
people. And, I used to
Yeah.
pick it up out of the water and throw it away and consider it a problem. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
But
Well, here in Rhode Island, it's used for animal feed, and
yes,
actually, there was just a huge article on it, on the benefits for using it, for I don't know if it's called carbon sequestration in that area, but it makes cows have a little less flatulence,
well, there
right?
you go.
So, I mean, what a cool thing to find out, and especially here, we can harvest it. We have, they're my heroes. I love the seaweed growers. I love the shelf. I love the aquaculture people. I've been trained in it down at Roger Williams, and just finished a program here at URI, because I always want my kids to become farmers of the sea. That's a so hopefully they still will. But I like to keep up, and that's another program where we have people from all over the country in a program on Zoom where we were trained so we could all talk to each other about the issues that are involved. And they have the same issues, the mediation for aquaculture. People don't want aquaculture, the same reason they don't want cows next door or a pig farm. And so all that, dealing with society and continuing your farming, which is a huge pressure as well. Our farms smell. That's all there is. Mud. Aquaculture has mud. It's going to hit the boat next to you, your
Yeah.
$1 million yacht, and we're sorry. So how do you deal with that? So that in the training, and particularly with mental and emotional, to learn to control your emotions and your feelings, towards these outlet, and to get those people also to understand and recognize your farming techniques and understand what you're doing is incredibly important, to keep you at peace. Does
Well,
that
this
make
is
sense,
this is
right?
one of the reasons that relationships
Mhm,
and training farmers how to communicate with each other is such a key pillar of what I do, because I
mhm,
feel like it's super important for us to learn how to navigate those conflicts and potential conflicts. And sometimes we can
mhm.
head the conflict off before it even happens
Exactly.
by being
Mhm,
proactive about the way that we talk about our farms, about the way that we interact with our communities. I mean,
mhm.
there's a dairy farmer, Louis Escobar, who
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah.
just, I mean, Louis was, he's just amazing. But
Mm,
he had a hundred abutting landowners to his dairy farm. Now, if you want to talk about a potential for catastrophe, it's
mhm,
having 100 abutting landowners to a
mhm.
dairy farm.
Yeah.
You're talking
Absolutely.
noise, you're talking odors, you're talking dust,
Mhm.
I mean, you're talking everything.
Absolutely. And remember, 50 of those bought their homes because they were next to farms. They
Because
thought
it
that
looks
for
pretty,
agriculture,
but they
right?
didn't know about all they had no idea
Exactly.
about what happens with flies in the winter, in the summer.
Hmm.
Like they had no
Right.
clue.
Right.
And so he could have been sitting on a disaster. And
Hmm.
instead, he went out to each one of those neighbors
Hmm.
and he made a personal connection with them. He hosted every single year a 4th of July bash where he would set off fireworks for the
Mhm.
neighborhood, like a big block party. And he was like, I just feel like his whole approach was so remarkable because it was not about, oh, we're enemies. It
Mhm.
was, hey, we're living in this community together.
Mhm.
How do we respect each other and create relationships that are going to be sustainable for your quality of life and for our quality of life? And that is
Exactly.
the kind of skill that most people, not only farmers, but most people do not develop. Like, we
Right.
don't develop ways of saying, what is it that you need out of a situation, and how can I help meet your needs and make it so that you want to help meet my needs?
Exactly. Right.
And how we
To share.
communicate does it. Like, we can do it.
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, to share it like that is incredible. That's why outreach and communication, which are also, I'll call it marketing, are so important right now in agriculture, and there's so many programs where you go out to the community, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, and to communicate with them. Absolutely. It's right now, it's imperative that all farmers learn that skill to some point
Right.
in order to keep everybody happy.
And within the family, like,
Hmm.
I feel like those family dynamics, like when we're talking about some of the stressors,
Hmm.
the dynamics within the family, both between farm partners, which could
Hmm.
be spouses, it could be siblings, it could be, multi-generation, but also non-farming family. Because I mean, let's face it, land, especially in our area, land is
Hmm.
your biggest asset.
Right.
And when somebody's doing a farm transfer plan, that land is pretty much what farmers have. And
Exactly.
so, how do you work with a succession plan when you've
Hmm.
got some kids who are farming, some kids who are
Hmm.
not farming, and you've
Yeah.
got limited assets? Like, what do you do?
Right.
How do you make something that's equitable, that probably won't look equal,
Hmm.
and get everybody on board with that without destroying the family, which a lot of farms can't navigate that. And that's when the farm collapses, is because that succession
Absolutely.
plan
Right.
ends up with the conflict. And so, again, learning those skills to be able to communicate before you get to the succession planning stage is so
Right.
critical to make that succession work.
Right. And well, we know, I mean, the age of farmers in this area is getting older and older, and the succession is incredibly important, and it's not, you can't mediate it in your own family. You have to
Right.
have, because we don't even know, half of the parameters of that, or what the law says. For instance, on Long Island, you can't hand down your son to your son or daughter your farm because the acreage is more than $1 million an acre. So if you have 20 or 40-acre farm, you can't hand over $40 million piece of property to your kids without, they can't, obviously, it would be, millions of dollars worth of taxes. So all those programs, you know, uh, they've we've tried to set up programs for that, and
Yep, inheritance
many of the
tax.
states have
Yep.
programs for, and they'll say, what is your future? Any business plan, right? Even, in regular small business administration, what are your plans for 15 years or 20 years down the road? And that is part of your business or your farm, that has to be included in it. Not today, but if you are successful, what happens then, right?
Well,
And do you
and
have children, right?
what happens with the fact that farmers don't want to retire? Like,
Right,
farmers, most farmers want to go out on their tractors. Like,
right,
that's what they want to work up until the day that they die. So
right.
they hold on to the control of that farm as long as they can, which, our farmers can live in their 80s or 90s.
Oh, sure, they better.
Their kids are in their 60s or 70s
Right.
when they finally get the farm. Like, imagine what that's like. I mean, I'm 48, so I'm thinking about, if I were to just start getting control of a farm now,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say I had started with children younger and I had kids coming up and they were in their 20s, then, like, they would be wanting to get into the business. And that
Right.
would be the time that I should start thinking about, how I'm going to transfer to the next generation. But
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
just got it. I just
Right.
got it. So I
Right.
don't want to
So
give
it's
it up
your
before
baby,
I
right? It's your baby.
haven't
I'm
gotten
not
to do
giving my
anything
baby
with it
away.
yet. I've worked under dad and grandpa for all these years, and now I
Right.
have to do my own thing. And so again, those really complicated
Mhm.
emotions and all of that stuff that we don't talk about enough. We act like if we just get the plan right, it's
Right.
all going to be okay. But really, we need to work with what's going on here and here
Hmm. Hmm.
because that's where the struggles are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And your office isn't far.
No.
Your office is right, right where I'm sitting right now,
Yeah.
right? Your office is right there. So, and that's a huge difference too. So it's such a farming and agriculture is such a personal journey that you're really giving away your legs when when it's time to stop. If you do stop, plenty of farmers do not.
Right.
They,
Right.
they
So
expire on the tractor.
right. Well, I mean, we had an old farmer pass away in his orchard just a couple of months ago.
Mm.
He had already had to stop farming, but every day he would go out and walk through his orchard, and
Mhm.
and that's where he passed away. And you know, on the one hand, it's like, oh, he was all by himself, but on the other hand, he was probably exactly where he wanted to be. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's that
Mhm.
again, that whole tension. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here and I'm looking at the clock and I'm saying, oh,
Uh,
I could talk to you for
We could
hours,
talk for
Candace.
hours
I'm like,
about many things. Well, I'll come back.
we're gonna have to you on again.
I would
But
love that very much so. Yeah.
there is always one question I ask at the end of every episode. And
Mm.
if you had one piece of advice that you thought every farmer should have, like should know, what would
Mm.
that be?
Oh, what would, it would be sharing community. There's
Mm,
absolutely no question that that is the basis and the gift and the treasure um to get you from one spot to the next, particularly through crises or through really good times, that your fun is there with the sharing of community, your food is there with the sharing of community, and your sharing is there with the sharing of community.
yeah.
So to me, I think that, yeah, sharing community is probably the one I would advise anybody, the young farmers, going, and there's a lot of programs that they have, that sense of knowing there's other people that are like you, other people that have the same interests as you, that are doing the similar work to you and have the same dreams and goals in agriculture as you, is probably the strength that you could get through anything if you have that,
Yes.
you know, and you can make
Oh,
it through.
I love that. And I just have got to say, like, that is one of the purposes of this podcast is to
Mhm.
help to create a sense of that community and then to give us a place that all of these amazing women that I'm meet and men, because
Mm.
I do meet some men.
Yeah. Well, the men
We
are
bring
okay.
them
The women
on. Come
are
on.
okay. Women are our favorite here, right?
They
We're
do
so
make up
strong,
about 50% of the
right?
population. We should
Yeah.
we should include them.
Yeah.
But it is so that we can come together and
Mhm.
really get that sense of solidarity.
Exactly.
And so thank you for sharing that. And thank
Oh,
you for being part of this community
oh,
because
I'm so
this is
grateful. Oh,
really
Kristen, I
powerful.
mean, this is wonderful, and I think it's so important what you're doing, and I look forward to, to listening in and to being part of your journey here too.
Yes. Oh, well, as I say, in another year or so, we'll have you back on and we'll see
Yeah,
where we're all going and keep
absolutely.
connected. So
We'll all
thank you
just, yeah,
so
we'll
much.
just keep growing. Let's all keep growing, right? Right.
Yes. Yes, that is my tagline.
Wonderful.
It's
Oh,
your
there. Oh,
time
there we
to
go.
grow. I love
Yep.
it.
Terrific.
So thank you all for joining
Mhm.
us on Food, Flowers, and Fun. And come back and like us, subscribe, do all of those things that we do, and put some comments down below because we wanna connect with you. So
Yep. Oh, yeah. And come and visit. So come and visit me online. Is waterwayfarm.com is the easiest way, but we have a great Instagram. I love Instagram because then you can see what everybody's doing. And that also is Waterway Farm.
and we will have that down in the
Oh,
program notes
good.
as
Oh,
well. We'll
terrific.
have links and
I would
everything.
love
So
that. All
yes,
right.
so thank you so much.
All right,
And we
Kristen.
will we will see you all next time on Food, Flowers, and Fun.
What a blast. Thanks so much.
How do you multiply by fractions now?
Farmers calling, our show is all done. Goodbye, farewell, so long, adieu. See you next week, same time, same place for Food, Flowers, and Fun. Go in peace. Visit us at www.penlightfarmers.com.